Another domino has fallen. One of the last dominoes to fall this NFL offseason, and what a crazy offseason it's been. We've talked about it ad nauseum. I think there may be one more move left in the NFL offseason chamber. That might be Jimmy Garoppolo, but this was something we saw coming a mile away. We talked about no one else wanted Baker Mayfield. There weren't many other teams that needed a quarterback. There are only two. Now there's just one, and it was Seattle and it was Carolina. And Seattle has already expressed they have no interest, zero, in Baker Mayfield. So it just left one team. And we're going to talk about this deal and what it means for both parties, but mainly what it means for Baker Mayfield and the Carolina Panthers. That and I'm trying to preach to you guys to be better than me. I always tell the youth of America, don't be like me, be better than me. So I'm going to give you some advice on what you shouldn't be doing with your summer July evenings over the next 2 weeks. I'm your man, Louie T. This is the 274th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 274th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. This was supposed to be a Thursday podcast, but this is what happens when NFL news breaks. Plans change. And so we finally got what we had been waiting for probably the last 2 months or so, roughly. Once the Browns started courting Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield was upset and he wanted out. And that started the process of the Browns looking for a trade partner, one which they would not find until July the 6th. And it's amazing how that whole situation unfolded. So instead of, just blabbing on about it, let's just jump into the gem dropping session, shall we? Yeah, I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So this whole Baker Mayfield situation is fascinating, to say the least. So this was a guy that I felt like came out of nowhere to end up being the number one overall pick in the 2018 NFL draft. Was he the best quarterback in that draft class? You could argue that his tape was the best. It was the cleanest. I remember saying that very vividly, that it was the cleanest. I didn't think he was the best prospect in that class of quarterbacks. I thought Josh Rosen would be better. I recall, as I go back and watch, I thought Josh Rosen would be better than what he was. But my guy in that draft was Josh Allen. And anybody can go back in the archives and see that. But I thought Baker Mayfield would make a good NFL quarterback. Obviously there were some limitations with him size-wise, and I wasn't sure if everything that I saw. I'm always weary of Big 12 quarterbacks because there's not a lot of defense played in that conference. But he sold me when he went to the, I want to say it was the Peach Bowl. I can't remember what bowl game it actually was, but it was a playoff game against Georgia. They lost, but what an epic game that was between the Bulldogs, led by Jake Fromm, and Oklahoma, led by Baker Mayfield. It's one of the better playoff games I've seen in quite some time. I think it's probably the best playoff game I've seen since the Clemson Alabama national championship game, and probably before that you got to go all the way back to the Texas USC national championship game with Vince Young. So it was a very memorable bowl game, playoff game, and he was outstanding in that game. Even though they didn't get it done, he showed me something, and I said, okay, you know what? And I think he showed the Browns something. And that's what kind of sold them on making him the number one overall pick. he gets into the league and he snaps the Browns' losing streak. It kind of felt like Matthew Stafford all over again. Really good quarterback in college, goes to a downtrodden NFL organization that's currently on a massive losing streak. The Browns hadn't won. I think it was now, if I'm not mistaken, it was like a 18, 19 game losing streak. Tyrod Taylor gets hurt on a Thursday night against the Jets. Baker Mayfield comes in, leads them to a victory, and the rest is history. It's the same thing that happened with Matthew Stafford. The only difference was Stafford was a day one starter for the Detroit Lions, but they were coming off of a season where they didn't win a single game. They lose their first game or two the next season, and then the Lions finally get a win. Coincidentally enough, it was against Washington, but who's keeping score, right? So I felt like he was having that same kind of Matthew Stafford trajectory. I thought his rookie season was really solid. It was admirable for a guy coming in with not a great amount of talent around him necessarily, in a really bad situation, and he played well. And so there was all this hype surrounding Baker Mayfield going into year two. They got rid of their head coach, and they promoted Freddie Kitchens from offensive coordinator to head coach. I thought it should have gone to Greg Williams. That's nor here nor there. And I've always advocated for, if you have a young quarterback, you probably want to marry that young quarterback with an offensive mind. Doesn't have to be a young offensive mind. You'd prefer it to be, but you just want to marry it with an offensive guy so that if those two make beautiful music together, you don't have to worry about losing the guy that has helped that quarterback ascend. So maybe in hindsight, not hiring Greg Williams was the best thing, but definitely not. Hiring Freddie Kitchens wasn't, right? That was an abject disaster and an epic fail. Mayfield started to smell himself. I think he was given a leadership role maybe a tad bit earlier than he maybe deserved. He put his foot in his mouth oftentimes that offseason. Freddie Kitchens was in way over his head. We saw that during the regular season. Mayfield was a mess. Freddie Kitchens was a train wreck. He got fired after 1 year. Mayfield had to kind of revisit, what made him a good quarterback in his rookie season, which was shut the hell up, play football. And you get a new head coach in there, Kevin Stefanski, kind of more along the lines of what you really are looking to do when you have a young quarterback like Mayfield. You want to add a head coach in there, offensive-minded guy like a Kevin Stefanski that can grow with Baker Mayfield. And that's exactly what those two looked like they were ready to do for many years to come after Stefanski's first season in Cleveland, in which he won NFL Head Coach of the Year, led them to the playoffs and a playoff victory, one that he did not even coach on the sidelines for. It seemed like, man, they've got a chance to do something special in Cleveland, and Mayfield's going to be the guy that leads them to the promised land. But then we got into the offseason, heading into the 2021 season, and we started talking about these 2018 quarterbacks getting deals. And I said, hey, if you're the Browns, I'd probably wait on Baker Mayfield. And I said, if you're Baker Mayfield, go get the money, go get the money, go get the money, go get the money. Don't wait, okay? Go get the plate. Put it in front of the Browns and say, hey, load it up. And the Browns made him an offer. He refused because he thought he could get more. So he wanted to bet on himself. And we often talk about these quarterbacks betting on themselves, or players in general betting on themselves, but more specifically quarterbacks, because that's the position that isn't as dependent. You are dependent on others getting their job done, but at the quarterback position, you usually get all the credit, all the blame when things don't go well. When things do go well, you get all the accolades. And so we always talk about guys when they successfully bet on themselves, like Joe Flacco did, right? But we don't talk about when guys bet on themselves and it comes up snake eyes and they crap out. I mean, we don't talk about that very often. And I think Baker Mayfield might have just crapped out. Now, here's the thing. His story has not been fully written. This is another chapter in the book of Baker. And he still has an opportunity to get paid and get paid big in this league, be a starter, and prove the naysayers wrong. He still has an opportunity to do that in Carolina. But when he turned down an opportunity to sign an extension in Cleveland in order to bet on himself, and the Browns probably weren't gung-ho. Like, if the deal wasn't team friendly, if it wasn't something that spoke to them that said, hey, we need to jump on this, they probably weren't going to do it. And they were smart in not doing that, because I had talked about this all offseason last year. You got good Baker in his rookie season. You got, bad Baker in year 2. You got really good Bake in year 3. And there was a question mark going into year 4. And if you're the Browns, that couldn't have been very settling for you. That couldn't have been enough of a sample size for you to say, hey, we need to pay this guy a little bit earlier. Okay. The Bills saw all they needed to see with Josh Allen and knew this is a guy we need to lock up. So they did. I thought the Ravens were in a position to do the same with Lamar Jackson. And remember, I kept talking about those 3 quarterbacks and who was going to get paid first. Well, it ended up being Josh Allen. He ended up being the only guy from that 18 draft class of first-round quarterbacks to get paid last offseason. And, I don't know what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. He's talking about betting on yourself. He's betting on himself as we speak. We'll see how that turns out for him. But Baker betted on himself in 2021. It was I won't call it a disastrous season, but it was a disappointing season. After making the postseason in 2020, winning a game, and putting yourself in a position to feel like you were ready to take that next step in 2021, to then come out and have the type of finish to the season, because they actually didn't start that poorly, but the finish to the season was very disappointing. Baker Mayfield dealt with a ton of injuries. In his defense, the guy was all kinds of banged up. But anytime you decide to suit up and step in between those white lines, people ignore the fact that you have injuries. Unless you actually perform at a high level, then we praise you and talk about how you were able to do all these things despite being injured. But when you're injured and you play poorly, people ignore the fact that you're injured and just go straight to the fact that you played poorly, despite you putting your body on the line, gutting it out for your team, because you clearly give your team, no matter what the health percentage is, you clearly give your team the best chance to win, because the other quarterbacks behind you aren't any good. So you being out there gives your team a fighting chance. He did not play well, and a lot of those games were highlighted on national television down the stretch at Pittsburgh. I think they had a game at Green Bay on a Saturday. He was awful in that game. And again, people aren't trying to hear the fact that you were injured. They just see the play and they say Baker Mayfield stinks. And I think the Browns were like, well, kind of glad we didn't sign up for more years of that. But there was still the 5th-year option. They had already picked it up. They were in a position to give him one more opportunity to show what he was capable of. And then the Deshaun Watson opportunity presented itself. The Browns stuck their toe in the water and they said, that water's a little too hot for us. We're going to go ahead and get out of there. And then Baker Mayfield found out about it, and he got pissed off, and he decided to puff out his chest. Like, do you know who I am? I'm Baker Mayfield, right? And he pens a letter to the fans pretty much telling them, I'm out of here. Appreciate everything you've done for me. And I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? Especially at this juncture of the offseason, where this game of musical chairs that we like to play at the quarterback position, that gets resolved before any other position, okay? Teams don't play around with the most important position on their football team. So if they need a quarterback, they're going to go and get one if one is available to their liking. And we saw Washington go get Carson Wentz. We saw the Indianapolis Colts trade for Matt Ryan. We saw all the teams settle their backup quarterback situations. There was absolutely, even the Steelers said, you know what? We're going to go ahead and get Mitchell Trubisky just in case we don't get anything in the NFL draft. Everybody settled their quarterback situation and got it to a hush. And the Browns were looking around saying, hey, you sure you really want to do this, Bake? You really want to go there with us? Because we could take it there if you want to go there. And Bake said, hey, I want out of here. They said, okay, cool. Give me a second. They went on the phone, called Deshaun Watson's agent, said, hey, we got a deal you cannot refuse. 5 years, $230 million, all of it guaranteed. We'll even set up that first year's salary to make it so that if there is a suspension, you'll take a minimum hit with your salary. Hey, sounds like a winner to me. He took the deal. Baker was officially out in Cleveland, and now they were looking for a trade partner. Now they were looking to see who they could offload Baker Mayfield and his essentially $19 million salary. And the problem was teams were like, hey, we're good. We don't need a starting quarterback. But even if we were interested, we're not trying to eat $18.9 million. And the Browns are like, okay, well, we can help you with that. I mean, what are you trying to take on? And he's like, look, personally, we don't mind eating, $10 million of this. But there was no one out there saying, hey, we'll eat $9 million for Baker Mayfield because we're good. We already got a starter. We're good. We're not looking to bring Baker Mayfield in as a backup. Okay. That's part of the problem with him in Cleveland right now, is that he doesn't see himself as a backup quarterback. So you go from an opportunity to maybe re-sign in Cleveland to now out of Cleveland. Poor progressive. Those commercials were hilarious and they were well done. And you didn't have to do any more commercials. You can't run them anymore. I mean, you could, I guess you could still run them, but they don't make much sense now that he's no longer a member of the Cleveland Browns. Anyway, so Baker pretty much, strong arms himself into a position where he must be traded. The Browns don't even want him at the team facility during the OTAs. They tell him to stay away. And, he said, look, Deshaun Watson might get suspended. I'm not playing for the Cleveland Browns, so don't come looking at me. And the Browns are like, that's why we signed Jacoby Brissett, bro. We were never coming to ask you to play for us again. You don't have to worry about that. And so Bake and his camp just sat and waited. And the Browns were hoping, praying. And this is what happens when you wait until the last minute to make a decision like the Browns. And they had to wait. They couldn't make a move on Deshaun Watson until the criminal portion of his situation was resolved. And once those cases were thrown out, that's when all the teams started to really jump into that fray and try to put their name in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. And so by doing that, by waiting until there was resolution there, everyone pretty much, because they could have gotten some good draft capital for Baker Mayfield had they decided they wanted to move on from him much earlier in the offseason, when teams were still mulling over what to do with their quarterback position. If you're the Indianapolis Colts, would you rather have Matt Ryan or Baker Mayfield? And some people will say, give me Matt Ryan, and that's fine, but there's no future in Matt Ryan. Okay, you're not winning a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan. His best opportunity to do that was in 2016 with the Atlanta Falcons when he was league MVP. You're never getting that Matt Ryan again. Okay, that guy's never returning. Okay, he's come and gone. So there's no future. It's just like having Phillip Rivers. You might get to the playoffs. You're not winning a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan. And it's cool. He'll keep you in contention, but you're not winning a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan. There's no future with Matt Ryan, at least with Baker Mayfield. I'm not saying you're going to win a Super Bowl or, would be in a position to win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield, but at least there would have been an opportunity. And at least there would have been a chance for a future. Chris Ballard continues to avoid the elephant in the room in Indianapolis, which is drafting a first-round quarterback. And maybe Indianapolis always hovering around the postseason or being in the postseason complicates matters. That doesn't matter. If you like a guy, you go get a guy. They haven't done that at all. They keep drafting third and fourth round quarterbacks like Jacob Eason and Sam Ehlinger, who aren't going to ever see the field. They don't have the heir apparent to the throne in Indianapolis. They keep trading for or signing free agent quarterbacks every year. This is the fifth year in a row the Indianapolis Colts will have a brand new starting quarterback to start off the season. And so Baker Mayfield would have been of great interest to a team like Indianapolis had this whole situation played itself out 2 months prior to when it ultimately did. But because Indianapolis had already made a move, because Washington had already made a move, because all the other teams in the league that had question marks potentially at the quarterback position had already settled those discussions, you are now essentially sitting here with a quarterback that you want to trade that really no one was beating down your door except for one team, and that was Carolina. Carolina's like, hey, we're interested, but we're not overpaying. Okay, we've done this before. We did it last year with Sam Darnold. Okay, where we had to go out and get a guy, gave up some stuff, took on a salary. They're paying Sam Darnold $18 million this year. You think they want to pay Sam Darnold $18 million this year, this Carolina? Hell no. They don't have a choice. So they're like, look, we're not getting ourselves into the same predicament we got ourselves into last year, okay? So, but we do want Baker Mayfield. And when you realize nobody else does, hit us up. We'll come to terms. We'll figure out something to make this work, and we'll get the deal done. Until then, knock yourself out trying to find another trade partner, and good luck. You're going to need it. And so the Browns waited and waited and waited and waited. And finally, the Browns said, okay, training camp's right around the corner. You twisted my arm. You got me. Nobody else is bringing our line. All right, here's what we're willing to do. We'll eat 10 million of this, 10 and a half roughly of this contract, which leaves you on the hook for $8.4 million roughly. Okay. And the Panthers said, that's still too much. That's too much. I was thinking more along the lines of 5. And the Browns were like, all right, man, hold on one second. They hit Baker up on the other line. Baker picks up. Hey, Bake. So Carolina's interested. We're ready to do the deal. We got one snag here. We don't want to pay but $10.5 million of your $18.9 million salary. Panthers only want to pay roughly about 5. So you're going to need to kind of slice off $3.4 million worth of salary to make this thing work. Are you interested in doing that? And of course, Baker's like, you know what? At this point, that's progressive money. I'm good. Yeah, go ahead, make the deal. I'll slice off the 3.4. They could eat 5. You'll eat the other 10.5. Everybody's happy. Get me the hell out of here. And so there you have it. The Panthers said, hey, we'll take the number 1 overall pick in the 2018 NFL draft. We'll take the number 3 overall pick from that draft. We'll have those two battle it out on the gridiron in training camp, and we'll see who comes out on top. So the assumption by most of us is that Baker Mayfield's going to be the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers week 1 when the Browns will be coming to Carolina. Isn't that cute? But it's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because I don't think Baker Mayfield's going to be starting. He should be. He's the better option. But Ben McAdoo, a.k.a. Ben Wackadoo, who is the new offensive coordinator in Carolina, and you say what you want about Ben McAdoo. He's not a great head coach, but he knows his X's and O's, okay? He's already said that his starting quarterback, which he had to recant and walk back because he's not in a position to say this, but he said, my starting quarterback is Sam Darnold. They've had all offseason to work out some of the kinks. He's been able to really digest that playbook. This is why you want to get trades done for quarterbacks in particular done quickly, because the longer they have to digest that playbook and be comfortable with it, the better off they are and the more comfortable they are with everything that is going on the football field. And it allows them to make checks at the line of scrimmage. It allows them to know what their progressions are and get through them quickly. It allows them to get guys lined up. It allows them to be the leader on the field that you want your quarterback to be. It's hard for that guy to be a leader when he doesn't know the plays. If I'm telling you what to do and you're the quarterback, we're in trouble. So it's going to be tough for Baker Mayfield to get to Carolina on July 7th, because I'm pretty sure he's gotten his hands on the playbook already as we speak. Okay. But it's going to be tough for him to get himself acclimated up to speed and be able to beat Sam Darnold out in camp, because he's not going to be as comfortable with that playbook. In my mind, we're going to see Baker Mayfield in a Panthers uniform starting for the Carolina Panthers at some point in the upcoming 2022 season. I just don't think it's going to be week 1, which kind of sucks for that Browns-Panthers matchup that's already slated for week 1, because I think Sam Darnold is going to be your week 1 starter. I truly believe that. And a lot of us forget, and for good reason, Sam Darnold stinks, okay? The guy sees ghosts. I'm seeing ghosts on the football field. He started 3-0 last year. albeit against lesser competition, the Jets, the Texans. I forget who the other team that they beat during that 3-game win streak to start the season off, but they weren't any good either. I get it. They were 3-0. And then they weren't 3-0 anymore. They lost a lot of games in a row, and Sam Darnold was awful during that stretch. I think the Broncos might have been the other team they beat, but that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is the Panthers believe in Sam Darnold to an extent, enough to where I don't think that they trade for Baker Mayfield and automatically he's the starter. There's going to be a real competition, one that Baker Mayfield is going to be an underdog in because he's coming in and he's going to have to play catch up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that, because we know who of the two, who gives you the best chance. That guy's Baker Mayfield if all things are equal, but all things aren't equal right now. So I don't want to make the assumption that Baker Mayfield is going to be the starter week 1, but let me recap this real quick. So the trade is Baker Mayfield shipped off to Carolina in exchange for a 2024 5th-round conditional pick, which can turn into a 4, depending on snaps, things of that nature. So it's a win, if you ask me, for Carolina. It's a win because you just upgraded your quarterback position. And I'd like to see you make the decision to just go ahead and make Baker Mayfield your starter week 1. I don't think they're going to do that, but we'll see. Time will tell. But to get Baker Mayfield for $5 million, essentially, and you're paying the two guys that are going to battle it out, you're paying a total of $23 million between the two of them. That's good money, man. And if Baker Mayfield turns out to be what you're looking for at the quarterback position, then you will have to, move accordingly, probably franchise tag him until you can figure out a number that makes sense for both parties involved. And if you're the Carolina Panthers, you probably are best off just franchise tagging him, letting him play under the tag, just to figure out because if history repeats itself, if the pattern continues with Baker Mayfield's career, he's going to be outstanding this year, okay? Every odd year Baker Mayfield plays like he's back at Oklahoma. The problem is every even year he plays like he's shit, okay? And so they wouldn't be smart to just off of one season decide that this is the guy, But if you want to find out, we already know Sam Darnold is not the guy. That we do know. I don't give a shit about Ben McAdoo coming over and what difference he may make as an offensive play caller. The fact of the matter is Sam Darnold's NFL career has already been decided. We already know that this guy does not have what it takes to be a starting quarterback. He could be somebody's backup quarterback, and he will. I think he'll have a very long career as an NFL backup. But Baker Mayfield still has a chance to be an NFL starter. So if you're Carolina, which would you rather do? Both of these guys are in the final year of their rookie contract. Which would you rather do? Waste more time with Sam Darnold or get as many snaps out of Baker Mayfield as you possibly can to try and figure out, to try and paint the picture that you need to see in order to make a very smart and rational decision at the end of the 2022 season? I think the answer is pretty simple, but it's a complex question that has nuance to it because, again, who gives you the best chance to win week 1? That guy may be Sam Darnold. Who gives you the best chance to win week 5? That guy may be Baker Mayfield. We'll see what happens. But all in all, it's a great deal for the Carolina Panthers, right? You got Matt Corral still there. So even if these two guys stink, you still got a guy that you think could be the future of your franchise. So you don't want to forget that piece. But similar to Washington with Carson Wentz, To hell with Matt Corral. You didn't draft him in the first or the second round. You drafted Matt Corral in the third round. For all you care, Matt Corral could never play a single snap for the Carolina Panthers. If Baker Mayfield's that dude, Matt Corral can kick rocks. Same way Washington feels about Sam Howell. Hey, love the fact that we got him in the 5th round. Tremendous value. But if Carson Wentz is that guy, if he's that dude, to hell with Sam Howell. Hope he never plays a single snap on the field for the Washington Commanders. Okay, that's a 5th round pick, not a first, not a second, but a 5th. For the Panthers, it's not a first, it's not a second, it's a 3rd for Matt Corral. So again, nothing's guaranteed to Matt Corral. They do not have to play Matt Corral. That is optional. They're hoping that Baker Mayfield is the answer. They got 2 2018 top 3 picks, number 1 overall in Mayfield, number 3 overall in Darnold, to try and figure out if they got the guy on the roster or not. I think we already know about one of them. The question is, how soon will they start to find out about the other? So for me, the Browns clearly lose this trade. You eat $10.5 million. You only get a conditional 5th in a draft 2 years down the road. But this is what happens when you get handcuffed, okay? When you get locked up and, you know, they knew that this existed, that there was a chance that Baker Mayfield could be out if they landed Deshaun Watson, but they weren't sure. They got Deshaun Watson, and they put themselves in a position where it was hard to offload Baker Mayfield. They were hoping someone would get desperate and thirsty, and it just never happened. And this was the perfect year for a team to get desperate and thirsty at the quarterback position because the draft wasn't all that great, but it just never materialized for the Cleveland Browns. The only other recourse they could have had was to just wait it out, and just see if there was a major injury to a quarterback in camp or in the preseason to put you in a position to maybe get a Sam Bradford type deal from someone leading into the season. Highly unlikely, but that was your best bet. But you didn't want the cloud of Baker Mayfield and the controversy that was going to follow you to training camp. We talked about this. There was no way Baker Mayfield was going to be on this roster by the time training camp kicked off because it was going to be too big of a distraction. They wanted him gone. He did not want to be there. They were going to find resolution to this thing before training camp. So there it is, 5th round pick, a conditional 5th rounder in 2024. Panthers only eat $5 million of an $18.9 million deal. Browns have to eat 10.5. Baker takes a $3.4 million pay cut, essentially. I'd say it's a win for the Carolina Panthers. For the Browns, you shed yourself of, $9 million roughly off the cap, and you get rid of a headache. But you don't feel like you won today. You just feel like, okay, we got rid of a problem. So, Panthers, let's see what they do with it, man. I mean, at the end of the day, they had an experiment last year with Sam Darnold. It didn't go well. They're going to try that experiment maybe once more. But they got another experiment. They got a new project now. And we'll see if this one is any more successful than the last. We think this one is more talented or at least more headstrong. We'll see what happens on the football field for the Carolina Panthers. I'm intrigued by the Panthers this year because I was a big proponent of Matt Rule when he got the job, and I said he was going to change and turn that program around. And right now, he seems like he's overwhelmed by the pro game right now. He seems like a guy in over his head. A lot of the moves made this offseason were because of his situation where he was staring down the gun barrel. His owner is impatient, and David Tepper wants to win, and he wants to win now. He's not looking to wait for Matt Corral to figure it out. He wants to put a winning product on the field. And a lot of the decisions that, David Tepper has made have been off the cuff to me, even down to firing Ron Rivera, moving on from Cam Newton. I thought all of those moves were prematurely made, and they haven't really done anything since those moves have been made. And I thought Joe Brady and Matt Rule and that combination was really going to do big things. I couldn't have been more wrong. Joe Brady clearly in over his head as an offensive coordinator. Teddy Bridgewater said, look, we didn't even have red zone periods. We were so unprepared for the upcoming week's opponent that it wasn't even funny. And to think that I thought this guy was going to be the next big thing at the head coaching position, boy, was I wrong about that. That deserves a double O. Okay. I was wrong about one Joseph Brady, but I still think Matt Rule can turn that program around. He's going to need some help. One of these quarterbacks, I think it's Baker Mayfield, is going to have to play good football. Christian McCaffrey's going to have to stay healthy. All right. And Kwagwu, their first round pick, going to have to get it done at tackle. There are a lot of things that have to fall into place for them if they're going to be a successful team and compete in a wide open NFC South outside of Tampa, who isn't a guarantee. Okay. When your quarterback is mulling over retirement and he's already signed a contract to be the next, color guy at Fox, the most lucrative deal in broadcasting history, you can't tell me that Brady's locked in. And I want to hear the shit about being the GOAT. When a guy is mulling over retirement, there's no way he's 100% invested. So Brady's talking about losing his edge and all of this bullshit. So the Bucs are not a lock to do anything, but they should take care of business in that division. But if you're Carolina, hell, if you're New Orleans with Jameis Winston on the mend, you're saying, hey, why can't we win the damn division this year? Why can't we make noise? And remember, the NFC is wide ass open. After Tampa, Green Bay, and LA, Rams, of course, Super Bowl defending champions, who's standing in the way? And Green Bay, we don't know what this iteration of the Packers looks like without Devontae Adams. I think they're going to be just fine, but we don't know what they're going to look like there. And of course, I just gave you reasons why Tampa might not be the sharpest this year. So, and you got a new head coach in Todd Bowles. It's not Bruce Arians calling the shots anymore. So it could be a whole different swag in Tampa Bay this year. The bottom line is, I said all of that to say, hey, why not you, Carolina? Baker Mayfield's an upgrade, okay? You stole today is what you essentially done. You waited these boys out, and you waited until they had no other recourse of action. And they had to finally sit down at the table and give you what you wanted, which was the quarterback, $5 million worth of salary that you're going to have to pay him, and an opportunity to upgrade your quarterback position. You won today, Carolina. How big? Only time will tell, because we could be sitting here having the same conversation about your quarterback situation next year as you look to start Matt Corral because Baker Mayfield was a train wreck, in addition to Sam Darnold. You won temporarily. Again, how big of a win? We'll see. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the next segment of the show, social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. You guys know how this goes. If you want to have your comment read, simply use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If you want to jump to the front of the line, super chats are the way to make that happen. And so with that said, we will jump into your comments and see what you guys have to say about this trade. One of the last dominoes we expected to fall. Look, this wasn't a surprise. We talked about this probably 3 weeks ago, that this is the only option for Baker Mayfield is the Carolina Panthers. And the Panthers were interested. It's not like they were twisting the Panthers' arm, the Browns were, to take Baker Mayfield off their hands. They're in a very dire position because you can't feel confident going into the season with Sam Darnold as your starter after seeing what you saw from him last year. Granted, the offensive play calling and the whole offensive situation wasn't ideal with Joe Brady as your coordinator. That's besides the point. Sam Darnold continues to look like the Sam Darnold of old. When he's pressured, he does stupid things with the football. And that's not something that just started when he started seeing ghosts in New York with the Jets. He was doing stupid shit with the football when he was back at USC, which is why I was never a fan of Sam Darnold. So I don't think you can, get Sam Darnold to just get on this straight and narrow path to playing confident and good football. I think he is what he is as a quarterback. So I think they had to make a move. They were interested in Baker Mayfield. They made the move. Now I want to see what happens. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get traded. I think this, to me, is going to be the last domino. Now, again, and I've already made this point, there is the outside chance that something happens. Like, for instance, Deshaun Watson gets suspended. I don't think it's going to be a significant amount of time if he is suspended, but he may not be suspended at all. But let's just assume that he gets 6 games. That's not enough to go out and trade for a Jimmy Garoppolo. You just roll with Jacoby Brissett for 6 games, hope that he can get you to 3-3 or better, and then Deshaun Watson takes over the controls, and you feel good about the rest of your season. If this is a year-long suspension, and I don't see any way possible at this point that it becomes a year-long suspension. I almost put this at 1%, okay, that he gets suspended for the entire season. I just don't see that happening. There's not enough evidence right now from what we're being told to have him miss an entire NFL season. That said, just for this discussion, the purposes of this discussion, we'll assume that he gets suspended for the year. All right. In that case, that's like an injury. The guy's going to miss the entire year. In that case, maybe a Jimmy Garoppolo is now on the table. You trade for him. Okay. I think the only way Jimmy Garoppolo ends up in another uniform via trade is someone has to get hurt. Otherwise, if the 49ers are comfortable with him staying on the roster, he'll be a member of the 49ers for the upcoming season. I think they want to move on from him because I've already talked about the psyche and the fragile psyche of a young quarterback, especially one that's been there and seen what Jimmy Garoppolo was able to do for this team. Look, we can sit here and shit on Jimmy Garoppolo all we like. The fact of the matter is, 2 out of the last 3 seasons, Jimmy Garoppolo has led his team to the NFC Championship game. Again, say what you want. 3 years ago, he went to the Super Bowl. Last season, he was in the NFC Championship game. And if Jaquiski Tartt could catch, as I've said a million times, he would have been in his 2nd Super Bowl in 3 years. Trey Lance, having sat there and watched that, knowing how the rest of the team probably feels about Jimmy Garoppolo, like, hey, you say what you want about Jimmy, Jimmy wins ball games. Do you want him looking over Trey Lance's shoulder? Do you want a guy that just a season ago took this team within a quarter from being in the Super Bowl? Do you want that guy breathing over on the neck of your young quarterback so when he has a rough half of football, when he's 6 of 15 for 37 yards and 2 interceptions in the first half of a game that you're trailing 17-3, for as bad as he's played, it's still a winnable game. You could make the switch to Jimmy right now and come back. Do you want that lingering? Do you want a 1-3 start to your season and fans clamoring for Jimmy Garoppolo to be put in the game because he gives you a better chance to win? Do you want that hanging over the head of your 2nd-year quarterback making his first year as a starter? The answer is no. We all know that. And that's why the 49ers are going to try to get something done, or they may have to release Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't see them doing that. It's just not smart business, but they drafted a quarterback that they think it will be their new CJ Beathard. I just figure Jimmy Garoppolo is going to end up being released when it's all said and done. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section, see what you guys have to say, and knock these comments out. My girl, Condo P, writes, Terry's press conference was everything as a Commanders fan you hoped for and then some. Time to give Riverboat Ron credit for the things he gets right, and they did it with 17. I feel the same way about his presser as I did when he issued the statement, pretty much thanking everyone, talking about how humble he was and how much gratitude he had for the opportunity to be in Washington and try to help us build a winner. All of the things that he said in that heartfelt, penned letter to the fans is how I felt about listening to him for 32 minutes talk about the journey, how he got here, the adversity that he's faced throughout his life, whether it was people telling him he wasn't good enough or, you're only a special teams guy to, turning yourself into one of the best receivers in the NFL. Hell, we all heard the story of Urban Meyer. We've heard it numerous times, but we got the graphic version of it from the wide receiver coach. I don't know if you guys have seen that clip on Twitter, but I retweeted it on my page, so I'm pretty sure if you're a Washington fan and you follow me, you've seen it if you didn't see it on your own. And so, to hear the harshness of that, because I think a lot of people don't understand how harsh coaches are, because you see the button up guy that steps up to the microphone, says all the right things, mild mannered. But it's a lot of F-bombs and you're 17, 18 going to a school, and these coaches don't care about that shit. They're cussing your ass out. They're getting in your face. They're trying to get the best out of you. But a lot of these coaches, the way they do that is they scream and holler, and the receivers coach essentially said this guy, Terry, wasn't even a member of the Buckeyes. He was still a high school student. So you're talking about a guy that's probably every bit of 16, 17 years old. And Urban Meyer's telling him how garbage he is. You effing suck. If you want to make it here, here's what you have to do. Go home, catch 200 balls a day, and come back to Friday Night Lights, and maybe we'll give you an opportunity. So, he talked about all of those things and how that helped mold and shape him into the man that he is today. And he talked about talking to Doug Williams and Gary Clark and some of the OGs and said, look, we want what you guys had. And so I want to take as much knowledge in from you guys as possible to help us get to where we want to be. And I kept telling everyone, Terry's going to want to leave. This is a dysfunctional organization. I said, look, we drafted him. We gave him a chance. 9 times out of 10 with guys in any sport, specifically football. I don't want to talk about any other sport because basketball, these dudes ain't loyal, okay, in the NBA. But in the NFL, a lot of times you want to stay where you're drafted. You want to get paid there unless something happens where there's irreparable damage done. You want to stay there. You want to help that team. Even if that team's been struggling, you want to help them get over the hump. And that's what Terry's here to do. And couldn't have picked a better guy as our captain, leader, and the guy that is going to be, obviously the quarterback gets all the frills. And, when we play a game on prime time, they're going to show Carson Wentz. But if it was Terry, I wouldn't have any issues with that. That's the kind of guy you want representing your organization. So it was everything I thought it would be. Derek B., thank you for the comment. My guy Derek B. writes, wow, the Panthers took the last 4 books and set the Browns. Yeah, they set them back a little bit. They bid 6, and the Panthers bid 6 as well. And we're sitting out there saying, there's an extra book out there, right? Actually, they bid the Panthers bid 6 and the Browns bid 7. And somebody was lying, right? Somebody's lying. You could each get your books. Could be 13 books out there, but as you said, they got the last 4 books. They ended up getting 8, set the Browns back. They had 5, and it's a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful thing when you're able to kind of wait out, let all those big cards go, and you holding, the ace, the king, and I don't know if deuces are wild. I don't know how y'all play if you playing straight up, but if you got that ace, king, queen, jack, or you got that ace, king, and a 10 and a 9, and the queen and the jack are already gone, you got the last 4 books. There ain't nothing anybody can do about it. So it's a really good situation if you're Carolina for sure. He says Baker takes a $3 million haircut after demanding $40 million before the Watson deal. Nicely done. Again, I don't know if the Browns actually had an offer on the table, but Baker bet on himself. He bet on himself, and right now it's not going well. But again, the Baker Mayfield story is not completely written. This is a new chapter. We'll see what happens here in Carolina, but I won't say this is his last opportunity to start, because we've seen guys like Carson Wentz, for instance, get, a multitude of opportunities to start. And just depending on how he plays. The only reason Carson Wentz is getting another opportunity is because he played relatively well last year for the Indianapolis Colts. If Baker Mayfield plays well, but things don't go well in Carolina and they go, 6-11, but he plays well. And whether it was the defense that didn't play well, or they had some issues field goal kicking wise that held them back, or whatever the case may be. But he played well enough for them to win, 10 games. Then even if he's not back in Carolina, he may get another opportunity elsewhere. So we'll see what happens, for Baker Mayfield. But yeah, he didn't put himself in a favorable position, and that's kind of what happens when you think more highly of yourself than what the rest of the league views you as. I think sometimes, and we talk about athletic arrogance all the time, and how you have to have it to play at the highest of high levels, no matter what the sport is. You have to be athletically arrogant. You have to feel like I'm better than that guy, and I deserve to be here. But at some point, you also have to look in the mirror and understand that, you aren't as good as you might have thought, or this is how the rest of the league views me, and I have to change that narrative. When you don't ever look in the mirror, you don't self-reflect, you end up like Robert Griffin III, broadcasting at the age of 28 because you can't get work. So if Baker Mayfield wants to go down that path, he's quickly heading down that path by, not acknowledging that he's got to be better. If he wants to stay in the league, even if it's not in the starting capacity, then, he's got to be able to accept the fact that this is where I am in my career and this is what it's come to. And, I don't know if he's that guy or not. He doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to be able to sit there and take his lumps. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Derek B also writes, I would still prefer the Wentz trade. Wentz's high is better than Baker's high, and Wentz's low is still higher than Baker's low. 3 months of uncertainty would have killed me. I think if you ask Washington fans which they would have rather had, I think it would have been close. I think now asking them now is not fair because they've opened themselves up to the idea of Carson Wentz starting, and I think now it would be skewed towards Carson, right? Had you asked them this 3 months ago when the Carson Wentz trade first happened, 2 months ago when Wentz was first traded for, I think you might have had more fans that wanted Baker Mayfield than Carson Wentz. I was among that group. I would have taken Baker Mayfield. But I also know that, to your point, Carson's high, it's better than anything Baker Mayfield can put forth. At his best, Baker Mayfield, to me, is a guy that I thought it was the perfect system. Like I'm actually disappointed in how things turned out in Cleveland for him, because that system was tailor-made for him with Kevin Stefanski. Like, you couldn't have set it up any better, which is why I thought he would have worked perfectly in Indianapolis. It's the same type of system in terms of, except that the Browns' run game was more of a stretch zone run blocking, but they could also run power when they had to. Same with Indianapolis, similar offensive scheme. There's a little bit more power, but they could run off tackle. They could run some zone, but it was both heavy run with that hard play action fake. And Baker, I think, thrives in that environment. And I thought he would have had an opportunity to do the same thing in Indianapolis. And so not quite sure how he'll fit into Ben McAdoo's offense. I think it's closer to the offense he played in at Oklahoma than it is anything he's played in the NFL. But I thought that heavy play action fake, offense was really suited for the skill set of a Baker Mayfield. So I think that he really messed up a golden opportunity to be in a spot that I thought fit his skill set and be comfortable in a team he could call his own. So I think, in hindsight, Wentz is the better option. But I think if you would have asked that question to Commanders fans, 2.5 months ago, I think you would have had a lot of Baker Mayfield responses. So at this point, it's not even up for a debate. You don't want to wait this late. I mean, literally, training camp is less than a month away. You don't want to wait until now to trade for a guy that you hope is ready to start week 1. That's not ideal. You want that guy getting reps in mini camp and OTAs and being ready by the time training camp starts. There's no way Baker Mayfield can be 100% confident, not even 75% confident in his ability in that playbook. Depending on the complexity of that playbook, of course, could be a pretty simple one, but it's hard for me to imagine him being able to really digest that whole thing and be ready to go the first day of training camp. Whereas a guy like Wentz, who was traded for, 2.5, 3 months ago, he'll be ready. He's been getting reps all off season, and he may not be at 100%, working efficiency with the playbook, but he's getting close, So, yeah, I think most fans would agree that waiting this long would have been painstaking, painstaking. My guy John Perez writes, Mayfield to Carolina seems like a move to save Matt Rule from getting fired 5 games in, but I'm surprised this took so long. This is exactly what it is. Matt Rule's trying to save his job, which is what I talked about maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, in the sense that he had a meeting with his owner, David Tepper, and Tepper was like, look, I need some improvement or I'm cleaning the house. I'm paying you a lot of money. Remember how much money Matt Rule got, how much money it took to woo him away from college football and to outbid the Giants, who, was his hometown team. And to get him to come to Carolina, it cost a pretty penny. And, David Tepper was expecting, I don't know if I should say a winner immediately, because they were so close in so many games that first year, right? That I thought, okay, this next year they're gonna be tough to deal with. And they moved on for Teddy Bridgewater. They brought in Sam Darnold, and they started 3-0. And I said, see what I told you about Carolina. Now I said there's a caveat. They haven't played anybody. And I remember watching that Thursday night game that made them 3-0 against Houston when they had to start Davis Mills. That was his first career start. And how bad that game was. Christian McCaffrey got hurt in the first half of that game. And I remember just watching how bad the Texans were playing, and they were in that game with a chance in the fourth quarter. And I said, Carolina stinks. They suck. They barely got away tonight because they started against a rookie quarterback, making his first career NFL start. With not a lot of talent around him. Like, if they were playing anybody else, they would have lost tonight. And that kind of played itself out as the rest of the season, wore on. But at the end of the day, Matt Rule is in a position where he's trying to save his ass. And it's all about self-preservation, which is why he got rid of some of the staff that he assembled, brought in guys that were more competent at their job, because he has to focus on the overall picture. He can't afford to be, having his attention diverted to other portions of the team. He's got to go and oversee the entire team and product. And so this is definitely a move to try to save his ass. And we'll see if it works out for him or not. The reason it took so long is because of the money. That was the hang up. The Browns, for one, were trying to see if there was a team out there. Anything could have happened. Guy could have been off working out in Florida, away from the team. Boom, tears his ACL, and just like that, now somebody needs a quarterback. And the Browns are like, hey, I got Baker Mayfield over here. And the 49ers are like, oh, I got Jimmy Garoppolo. And they could have been, bitten out there, but that never came to fruition. Everybody was set with their quarterback situation, except for Carolina, which kind of really limited the options the Browns had. And so they were just kind of waiting to see if anybody else would show up and make it a bidding war to see if they could maybe up the ante on the draft capital that they could collect. And also they were really looking to get, from under that $19 million, salary for Baker Mayfield. And they were willing to eat some of it. They knew they were going to have to, but they weren't trying to eat the vast majority of it. Like, see, Carolina's like, look, I'm only trying to take $5 million. That still would have left the Browns with roughly $14 million. And the Browns were like, we're not trying to eat 14. That was the problem. That was the hang up. So when they were able to get Baker to shave off that 3.4, essentially it put the Browns in a position where they're like, okay, we could do 10-5. The Panthers like, we good for 5. All right, we got a deal. So that was the hang up. Browns were trying to see if someone else would come to the table desperately. It never, materialized. And then you're getting to the point now, time's a ticking, got to make a move. And this is the best they could do. Red Wings 01 writes, maybe Jimmy G does get moved, but more likely not. Niners sure ain't trading him to Seattle. Everyone else has quarterbacks. They may like him as an insurance if Lance struggles or gets hurt. And that's the dilemma that the 49ers find themselves in. And I've already talked about this, on previous podcasts, and I've even touched on it today, that it's a tough spot to be in if you're the 49ers, because on one hand, you would love the insurance policy of a guy that is going to a Super Bowl and it was minutes away from taking you to another last season. You'd love having that guy as a backup plan in the event that Trey Lance gets injured or doesn't perform at the level you were hoping in his second year, first as a starter. But on the other side, on the flip side, if you want to give Trey Lance the best opportunity to succeed, Jimmy Garoppolo can't be on the roster. It's really simple. And you say, well, he shouldn't be mentally fragile. It's the one position on the field where you don't want competition. Ask Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. Ask the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. They could have kept Alex Smith when they decided to start Patrick Mahomes. They didn't have to trade Alex Smith. But why? Why keep Alex Smith on the roster when I can get something for him and I can turn the reins over to Patrick Mahomes and not have him looking over his shoulder? Why? You don't hold on to veteran quarterbacks that have had success when you're looking to get your young guy in there and you want him to be successful. It doesn't make sense. The two counteract, okay? The two fight one another, okay? So they don't mesh well. So to me, I can't see a situation in which Jimmy Garoppolo is on the 49. They don't want to just release him. That's why he's still there. They really want someone to, even if it's the same thing that, Seattle just gave up, that the Browns just got for Baker Mayfield. Like, they want something for him. And with him, I think the money is going to be an issue. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo is making some good money. I don't know exactly how much, but it's a good amount of money. It's probably a nice piece of change he's making this year. And so that would be a conversation that would have to be had. But also, teams are like, I'm not giving you shit for Jimmy Garoppolo. Your back's up against the wall. Either you're going to keep him on your roster or you're going to have to release him. And then he's going to have to clear waivers because I'm not putting in a waiver claim because I'm not paying him his current salary. And then after he clears waivers, I'm going to try and sign him. Not have to pay him nearly as much because you're still on the hook for the money that you owe him. And I don't have to give up any draft capital. So teams are going to just wait. They're like vultures. They're just circling around and we'll see what happens. I think it's a tough spot to be in. The smart thing to do would be to release Jimmy Garoppolo if you can't trade him. The easy thing to do would be to hold on to him. The hard thing and the smart thing are the same thing. But the easy thing to do would be to hold on to Jimmy G. Just because of what you just said. Rich writes, I love this move for Carolina. Extremely low risk, extremely high reward. I like this Carolina team and believe Baker can be their quarterback of the future. I love this move for them as well. I think this gives them a fighting chance in an NFC South division that is wide ass open. Obviously, Tampa Bay is the cream of the crop. Okay. But again, I've given you reasons why Tampa Bay could not. And when I say not dominate, meaning they win 11 games. Like Tampa, there's no way Tampa's not going to win, 10 games. If you want to win that division, you're not going to win that division at 8 and 8-9 or 9-8. You're going to have to win double-digit games. Tampa's still good enough to win 11 games, but they won't win 13 games. They won't dominate. They won't, run away with that division and hide if someone else wants to be competitive. Why not New Orleans? Why not Carolina now with Baker Mayfield? I like this move for them. I like their team as well, but Christian McCaffrey is such a huge part of what they do. He must stay healthy or else they end up going back to what they always go back to, which is a pedestrian offense when he's not in the lineup. When he's in the lineup, they're a tough outfit to stop. When he's not in the lineup, you just say, okay, your run game and the receiving threat out of the backfield is null and void. Now I can just focus in on trying to stop the receivers and get after your quarterback and make him uncomfortable. So they need him to stay healthy. That's going to be huge for them, as it always is. Mega 412 writes, hey, bro, the Panthers QB room is ass. That is all. It's not great. It's not great, but it's far from ass. Okay, it's far from ass because I like Matt Corral probably more so than most. And I think Baker Mayfield is good enough to be a starting quarterback in this league. So it's far from ass. I've seen much worse quarterback rooms in this league. Trust me. Seattle's quarterback room is ass. Okay, that's ass-tastic right there. You want to talk about ass? That's the definition of cheeks. You look up ass quarterback room in the dictionary, and there's going to be a picture of the Seattle Seahawks with cheeks next to it. Jason Bree writes, what's good, Lou? It's good, Jason. Says, just a quick flashback. You remember the times where it was JC Ice, stay on your goddamn feet when Crowder fumbled the punts, laughing my ass off? I do. I remember that. I remember JC Ice, yeah. Nothing's better than ice. JC Ice. I remember those too. When he was carving up dudes in the slot. Yeah, that last year of him fielding punts was disastrous. I think it was part of the reason that he ended up not being re-signed in Washington, to be honest with you. I think he felt like he needed a fresh start, and I think they were so disappointed in him that last year that they just let him walk. Red Wings 01 writes, Jordan Love is another situation that I think gets lost in the shuffle. I don't think he will be traded this offseason, but maybe next year. Big QB crop next year, though. We'll see. Yeah. We know the QB crop will be substantially better than it was this past year. But is it going to be good enough to stop a guy like Jordan Love from being traded next offseason? I think the Packers can afford to wait, because what if Aaron Rodgers wins a Super Bowl this upcoming year and decides he wants to retire? Now, he still got Jordan Love, right? If Aaron Rodgers has a really good season and says, you know what? I'm done. I won 2 MVPs in a row. I've been to, 3 NFC championship games out of the last 4 years. Let's say they go to the NFC championship game again and they don't win. And he's like, you know what? I'm sick of this shit. I'm done. Plays at an MVP-like level again, but doesn't win it. And decides, you know what? I went out on top of my game. Didn't go out a winner, but I went out on top of my game. I'm done. You still got Jordan Love. These are probably highly unlikely scenarios. Now, they could win a Super Bowl. Highly unlikely in Green Bay that they're going to win the Super Bowl. Highly unlikely. Anything's possible with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. And he could retire if he wins a Super Bowl. Says, I got my second trophy. I've cemented my place in history with that second Super Bowl win. Now they can't say Eli Manning has more rings than me, and I got more rings than Drew Brees. Feel really good about where I'm at now. I can hang it up. Got the same amount as Peyton Manning. Yeah, I'm good. I'm done. The likelihood is they don't win the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers wants to play again next year, and Jordan Love becomes, because again, now you're getting into that territory of, all right, we still don't know what this guy is, and we got to decide about picking up a 5th-year option. You let somebody else figure that out by trading him. So as far as I'm concerned, this is Jordan Love's last year in Green Bay if Aaron Rodgers wants to play. And the deal that he just signed indicates that he thinks he's got 3-4 more years of football, good football, left in him. So I think you're right. A lot of people do forget about Jordan Love. It's easy to forget about him. And when we've seen him, he hasn't been very flattering either. That Kansas City game, it's not fair. That's a very small sample size. But, we've seen guys get an opportunity and light it up in that one opportunity. He did not do that. So, we'll see. If there are 4 first-round quarterbacks next year, it makes it a lot easier to not trade for Jordan Love. If there's only 2, right now, I see 3 potentially, with Anthony Richardson from Florida being the 3rd of that group. If he's able to stay healthy and continues to grow and mature as a passer, I see 3 potential first-round picks next year at the quarterback position, of course, going along with C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. We could have another guy. Every year, it seems like now we get a guy coming out of nowhere off the pace. When we have 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks go in the first round, we get a guy that comes out of nowhere to throw his hat to be either the number 1 overall pick or at least, a first-round pick. Joe Burrow did it. Zach Wilson did it. Josh Allen did it. These guys that come off the beaten path a bit and announce themselves to the college football world and end up being a high-level draft pick as a first-rounder. Who Who says that someone doesn't do it like a Will Levis? I'm not a Will Levis fan, but who says that he doesn't play the kind of football that lends itself to him being a guy that people start talking about as a potential first-round pick? So we'll see. Jordan Love is going to be interesting, to your point. And they're going to have a decision to make. I think the decision is if someone's interested, and it'd be hard for me to envision unless he goes out and absolutely shreds the preseason. I mean, he's got to tear the preseason to shreds this year, this Jordan Love. If he looks mediocre in the preseason, because remember, he's going to be going up against backups, even though he'll be playing with backups himself. The Packers have so many new young players that are going to make their football team that these are guys that are going to be around. He's going to have a chance to do some damage, and he needs to make a very good impression this preseason in order to convince somebody that next year he's ready for an opportunity. If he doesn't, I don't see the market for him being all that robust. Rich writes, if Baker ends up being the guy for the future, what does Carolina do with Matt Corral? At that point, there's no tape on him, just potential. Who's banking on that for QB1? Again, if there's, and I've already touched on this, there's no guarantees when you're a third-round quarterback. I think when you're a second-round quarterback, there's a really good chance you're going to end up getting an opportunity to start at some point. You know, it's rare that a team takes a second-round quarterback and he doesn't get a chance to start somewhere, even if it's not potentially on that particular team. It's rare, okay? You know, I think about the Andy Daltons and the Derek Carrs of the world. You know, these are the guys that you take second-round quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, another guy, gets an opportunity. You take a guy in the second round at the quarterback position, he's going to get an opportunity to start at some point. That's the prevailing thought. Third round or later, and there are no guarantees. I can't assure you anything. So, again, Matt Corral could, if you're a Panthers fan, you hope Matt Corral never sees the field because Baker Mayfield comes in, lights it up, and you got your quarterback of the future. And you don't, because nobody wants to be looking at the most important position, even if that guy's already on the roster. If you didn't feel good enough about that quarterback to spend a first or a second round pick on him, then I don't necessarily feel confident that he's the right man for the job. Again, Brady was a 6th round pick, but how many Tom Brady's are walking out on the streets? You know, since Brady got selected in the 6th round, how many 6th round quarterbacks have gone on to have successful NFL careers? Guys that were either drafted or undrafted. You know, Ryan Fitzpatrick, that might be it. I mean, there's not, that list is very short of guys that went undrafted or drafted 6th round or later that have had successful NFL careers. So at the end of the day, when you draft a guy in the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th, there are no guarantees to that quarterback. There's no guarantees to Matt Corral. And if he does end up being good, he being Baker Mayfield, you could trade Matt Corral. If someone out there liked Matt Corral, obviously no one loved him. He didn't go in the 1st or the 2nd round. But if there's a team out there that liked him during the draft process, and now they didn't have an opening before, they weren't really, desperate, but now they are, that's an opportunity where if you don't like the quarterbacks in that year's draft class, here's an opportunity for a young quarterback to get an opportunity to play, and you don't have to pay a lot of money. You probably are not going to have to give up a lot to get your hands on them. So it'd be similar to this Baker Mayfield trade, where it's a low risk, high reward type of proposition for a team down the road. Whereas Jordan Love, if I'm the Packers, I paid a 1st round pick for this dude. So whether I think he's good or not, I want at least a 2nd round pick for him. Because I've spent the 1st round. You spend a 3rd round pick on a dude, I mean, you definitely, and he hasn't played. Best you could do is a late round draft choice. We might even swap draft picks late in the draft, and I can take them off your hands. So I guarantee you that's a problem Carolina would love to have. Baker Mayfield goes out balls for them this year, and now Matt Corral is sitting there twiddling his thumbs. That's a problem I guarantee you the Panthers hope they have next season, offseason. HHC Lunar writes, think Jimmy G is going to get cut. Can't see anyone giving up anything. I feel the same way you do. I feel the same exact way that you do. Rich writes, is it just me or does Mahomes now give Russell Wilson vibes? Goes to 2 Super Bowls, wins one early in his years, then key players start to leave. The team struggles to get back to the Super Bowl. That's one way to look at it. That is absolutely one way to look at it. But I don't think they're done yet. But to your point, it's so hard. I feel like Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, it's so hard. Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama, it's so hard when you have success so quickly in your career and massive success, not just success, massive success. Understand that Russell Wilson went from a 3rd-round pick to the week 1 starter to going on the road, beating Washington in the playoffs in his rookie season, and should have won on the road at Atlanta before Matt Ryan made 2 ridiculous throws to get the Falcons in the field goal range to steal that victory away from the Seattle Seahawks. They would have been in the NFC Championship game in his rookie season. The next year he was in the Super Bowl. They win. The year after that, they go to the Super Bowl. Should have won. Didn't give it to Marshawn Lynch. It's hard to those first 3 years. Are you kidding me? Same with Mahomes. Didn't start his rookie season. First year as a starter, all the way to the AFC Championship game. Second year as a starter, his 3rd year in the league, Super Bowl win, and then you get back to the Super Bowl the next year and you lose to Tampa Bay. And you've been, as a starter, you've been to the AFC Championship game every year of your career as a starter. All 4 years as a starter, you've been to the AFC Championship game. It's hard to top that. It's a high bar that you've set for yourself, but I don't know if they're done or not. I don't know if they're done, but that is a great comparison. You know, that's one way to look at it. I don't look at it that way, but we'll see. You know, that's something that I'll keep in the back of my mind now that you've brought that up. But I don't get those vibes right now. Those aren't the vibes that I'm getting. Let's see. Derek B writes, can't give the Panthers too much credit. If Seattle had any interest at all, they still don't have a quarterback. Well, I think they knew that Seattle wasn't interested. The Seahawks had made it abundantly clear they had no interest in Baker Mayfield. They said that before the draft. They was like, hey, we don't want Baker Mayfield. We're good. And, you know, I was thinking that they were going to take a quarterback. You know, they had back-to-back picks in the top 10, did Seattle. I just felt like, did they have back-to-back picks in the first round? I know they had back-to-back picks in the second round. Yeah, they had back-to-back. They had Denver's pick. They had back-to-back picks in the first round and in the second round. And so I figured they were going to take a quarterback with one of those picks. And they were like, nah, we good. we don't believe in none of these dudes. We traded for Drew Lock for a reason. I'm like, okay. Did you guys see the tweet from the U.S. Open? Yikes. Anyway, I'm going to take this last one from Red Wings, and then we'll get to the final segment of the show. So Red Wings 01 writes, has the QB market finally reached a point of surplus? There are now teams with more QBs than they know what to do with, and they're playing longer and more are coming future deals. I don't think we've reached a surplus because you can still look around the league. Case in point, the Steelers. They don't love their quarterback situation, right? Like, we don't know what Mitchell Trubisky is going to be if he gets an opportunity. We don't know what Kenny Pickett's going to be when he gets his opportunity. But we don't know if either one of those guys are going to be any good for them. Same for the Atlanta Falcons. Like, I get it. They just drafted Desmond Ridder. And I'm telling you, don't count out Marcus Mariota having a resurrection to his career because Arthur Smith, the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, believes in him because he was there with Marcus Mariota in Tennessee. But we don't. It's the same situation in Pittsburgh. Like, 3rd-round quarterback. The Steelers took a 1st-round quarterback, but it's a 3rd-round quarterback that you don't know if he's going to be any good or not. And you got a retread. That's a former 1st-round pick, former top 3 pick in Mariota. In Pittsburgh, it's Mitchell Trubisky. I think both of them were second overall in their respective drafts. You don't know if those guys are going to be any good. Act 2, you know. So you can't say that those two teams have their quarterback situation figured out. And I'm pretty sure we can go around the league and the Eagles, I still don't think they're 100%, and they shouldn't be sold on Jalen Hurts. The Giants aren't sold on Daniel Jones. They've already spoken by not picking up his 5th-year option. Again, if we sat here and went through the league, we would probably come up with 8 teams that you could look at and say, of the 8 teams, 4 of them may find themselves looking for a quarterback in the draft next year. But 8 teams may not be stable at the quarterback position, or at least not confident in what they have quite yet. Throw the Saints in there. They can't be 100% confident in Jameis Winston. The answer is damn sure not Ian Book. Washington can't be 100% sold on Carson Wentz. And if it's not Wentz, they can't be sold on Sam Howell as a 5th-round pick. So, like I said, I don't think it's a surplus. I think that you get to this point of the offseason and everybody's made a decision on what their quarterback position is going to look like. So everybody's made a decision. We got a guy, or guys that we're going to roll with. We feel comfortable with those guys. We'll see what happens, and then we'll reevaluate the position after the season's over. And so, right now it may seem like a surplus. Seattle's quarterback situation is awful. Are you telling me that you can't find a quarterback better than Drew Lock or Geno Smith? Are you kidding me? A surplus would mean that everyone's got a legitimate bona fide starting quarterback, and then the backups are good enough to start if the other 32, if there's an injury or something happens. They're still not 32 legitimate starting quarterbacks starting this year. And so I don't think there's a surplus yet. But to your point, more young boys are coming down the pipeline. We'll find out about some of these other young boys that are going to get an opportunity like Trey Lance this year, to see what he is all about. What the miggity, what he's about in year 2, what Zach Wilson looks like with all the new weapons that he's been provided. Same with Trevor Lawrence and a new staff there that really gives them a chance in Jacksonville. We're going to see what those second-year quarterbacks are all about. We're going to see what these young boys that just got drafted are about if they get opportunities. And, so, yeah. And as you mentioned, quarterbacks are playing a lot longer. No longer, gone are the days where quarterbacks taking 6 concussions and he's retiring at the age of 34 because, Steve Young, Troy Aikman, they've taken too many shots to the dome. These quarterbacks can play till they're 40, 45, depending on, their genes and how they're taking care of themselves. But these guys are playing a lot longer. So, yeah, that does complicate matters. You're absolutely right there. But I still don't think there's a surplus. Good conversation there, guys. Enjoyed that thoroughly. Let's get to our final segment in garbage time. So, friends know when to say when, right? And I just want to make sure that you guys are doing the right thing out there. So, as a friend, and I hope you consider me an acquaintance at a bare minimum. I don't have to be your friend. Acquaintance. I still feel like it's my duty to make sure that you're spending your time wisely, okay? Friends know when to say when. Do not watch Summer League basketball, okay? Don't be like me. Be better than me, okay? My team is really good. We had the second best record in the NBA last season. We were a team that nobody really saw coming. Still a little sour that my coach didn't win NBA Head Coach of the Year. Monty Williams was essentially getting the award because he didn't win it the year before when he should have won it. And I don't like the fact that they gave it to him. Your team went to the NBA Finals and had a 2-0 lead and blew it. The fact that you had the number 1 seed the following year, to me, doesn't register for me as the guy that should win Head Coach of the Year. You did what you were supposed to do. We were playing game team from a season ago. No one was expecting us to finish in the top half of the Western Conference bracket. We finished with the second best record in the Western Conference. Anyway, I got sidetracked. Bottom line is, my team's good. We're young. It's fun. I told you, when my Braves were the baby Braves, it was young. It was fun. We were dumb. We were hungry. We didn't know any better. We showed up to the party early, and we were showing up often now. And, of course, we won the World Series last year. Oh, by the way, my Grizzlies, same trajectory. Young, dumb, hungry, don't know any better, showed up to the party early, and we're not going away. We're going to be here for a while, and we had a tremendous draft. And so I'm watching Summer League basketball. Shoot me, okay? I'm excited. I'm engaged. If your team's not any good, trust me, do not watch Summer League basketball. It's for addicts. It's for NBA addicts. Don't be that guy. However, Chet Holmgren, my God, if you did partake in some Summer League action last night, and there's more of that tonight, I will be tuned in. My Grizzlies are playing the Chet Holmgren-led Oklahoma City Thunder on ESPN2 tonight at 7, so I will be dialed in there. But you can just watch highlights. You don't have to submit yourself to that nonsense, okay? He was outstanding last night. And my buddy, we were talking about Chet, and I was like, man, I told him initially when I watched, we're Duke fans, so we played Gonzaga very early last year, and it was Paolo Banchero versus, Chet Holmgren, and those two were the number 1 and 2 prospects in college basketball at the time. And coincidentally enough, they ended up going 1-2 in the draft. But our guy dominated their guy. And he was relatively quiet in the game, didn't see much. Now, I know he's got a rare skill set. He's got that body type that's, he's rail like a thin. He's thin like a rail, but the guy can ball. He can shoot. He can dribble. And the thing that we always talk about, me and my buddy always talk about with college basketball in particular, is a lot of times when you get a big man, you really don't truly know how talented that big man is. Because in college basketball, they don't allow big men to show off their full skill set, because you have a distinct advantage in college basketball when you got a guy the size of a Chet Holmgren, or you got a guy that's 6'10", that's dominant. You want to put him on the block, because more likely than not, you're playing against a team with a 6'8" big man, because there's not a lot of big men in college basketball, okay? You see it in the NCAA tournament all the time. What's the biggest difference between, IUPUI and Gonzaga? What's the biggest difference? Yeah, Gonzaga has more talent, but they're both, smaller schools, technically speaking, mid-majors, even though, Gonzaga's no longer viewed as such, but they're technically both mid-majors. What's the difference? IUPUI's big man is probably 6'6". Gonzaga's got a 7'2" big man with number 1 overall NBA, draft pick potential. And that's what you see. That's where you see the biggest difference in college basketball is the big man. And so you're going to use that advantage. You're going to tell him, get down there where you have a 6-7 inch height advantage. We'll dump it down to you. They're either going to double team or you're going to eat, and eat well. And if they double, either you continue to eat despite the double, or you kick it out, and we should have open shots, and we've got shooters all around the floor spaced out for you. So you never really get to see the talent. Like, nobody knew that Anthony Davis was as talented as he was when he played at Kentucky. You never got to see him dribble. You never got to see him take his game out to the perimeter. So you had no idea that at one point he was a point guard, grew like 10 inches and turned into a big man, but he still got guard skills. You didn't know that because you never saw it at Kentucky. I didn't know Devin Booker, and he's not a big man, but I didn't know Devin Booker was that good when he was at Kentucky. All he did was catch and shoot, nothing else. He didn't dribble the basketball. He didn't get in the post. He didn't do anything other than catch and shoot. Chet Holmgren didn't put the ball on the floor all that often. He posted up. He would run around some screens. He would get some shots on the perimeter, but you never really got to see him as a true ball handler. You got to see all of that on display last night. And, oh, by the way, he blocked 6 shots, which is a summer league record. The guy hit like 5 threes. He scored 23 points. He was dominant on the defensive end. He was dunking the basketball. He was dribbling. One time he came down on some KD shit, got to the three-point line, went behind his back, and shot it off the dribble. That's some Steph Curry, KD shit. You're not 7'2" dudes aren't doing that. You know how many guys can pull up off the dribble and shoot a three? It's not a lot. It's hard to do. Most guys are catch and shoot. They got to have their feet set. He came down the court, went behind his back, and then pulled the trigger. Bottoms. He's built different. Now, it's Summer League. And I'm anxious to see how he plays tonight against my Grizzlies, because we're gonna put some body on his ass. You know, we're going to put a body on his ass. They didn't do a very good job of that with the Jazz last night. We don't have a 7-foot dude on the roster to contend with him height-wise, but we got some big son of a bitches. Chet Holmgren is 199 pounds. We just drafted a guy that's 6'6", 255. Oh, we're going to put some ass on him tonight and see how he deals with that. But I want to see what he does because, NBA, grown men. It's a grown man league, right? So he might be dominating these summer league boys, but we'll see what happens when he gets he's got a unique skill set. They're calling him the unicorn already. They've snatched that name from Porzingis and given it to Chet Holmgren, and rightfully so, okay? If you're not going to watch the Summer League, I don't advise you to. At least check out the highlights of this kid. He looks legit. I felt really good about my draft picks. Jake LaRavia, excuse me. Jake LaRavia, and my guy David Roddy had a rough go of it. He'll play much better tonight. And my backup point, Chandler, Kennedy Chandler, we gave him a 4-year deal and the most guaranteed money for a American second round pick in NBA history. That's how highly we think of him. He had the game-winning steal last night. Love that young fella and what he's going to turn into. And even Vince Williams out of VCU, our second round pick, left-handed, came in pulling it. We had 15 threes last night in Summer League. So I'm happy about my shit. But then I saw Chet and I was like, well, goddamn. Anyway, I digress. I repeat, do not watch the Summer League. I'll watch the Summer League so you don't have to, okay? Go play the video games. Go have a good time. Go have a drink. Go watch baseball. Do not watch, especially this Salt Lake shit. Do not watch the Summer League. I can't stress that enough. I did my part. That's my public service announcement for the day. Anyway, I digress. It's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me. Look forward to chopping it up with you guys. This serves as the Thursday pod, so I don't think you're going to get one tomorrow. You're not going to get one Friday, I don't think. I don't even know if I'm going to be home on Friday. Anyway, I did it early because of the Baker Mayfield trade. So I'm just going to leave the door open, slightly ajar for another pod, but don't hold your breath. But you will see me for the Command Post Live, tomorrow night if you're a Washington fan, or if you just want to come kick it. You don't have to be a Washington fan. You can come kick it and chill. But you will see me for the Washington or the Command Post Live tomorrow night. And we'll talk about the Terry McLaurin presser and, turn our attentions to training camp and talk about. And I think I got some pretty interesting topics that we will discuss on the show tomorrow night. So with that said, I'm about to get out of here. But before I do, I'm going to ask a small favor of you guys out there, and that's to hit the subscribe button for more great content. Turn on that notification bell if you haven't already done so you don't miss any of this content, and hit the like button as it helps this channel grow exponentially. I love the fact that, we were over 200 at one point, but we're around 170 and we're already over 100 likes. I love it. Hit the like button on the way out if you haven't already done so. Truly do appreciate you guys. Until next time, get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man, Louie T. You guys have a great evening. God bless and good night.